Hi. Yes, I'm well aware I'm using a gotcha model. Does anybody have any questions about it? Nope. Okay, good. We can get on with the rest of the video then. Food. Can't live without it, and if you live too much with it, then you just become overweight, and then you can also die from it. But we're not talking about that social dilemma. We're talking about the foods I don't like, and it's not many, but it's more than maybe some people. I don't know. And I'll start off by saying that I don't exactly outright refuse to eat them. I mean, one I just have major trust issues with, but for the other ones, it's just I need to eat them in a very specific way. Talk about two that are kind of the same thing, kind of not the same thing, and they're, hold on. Oh, okay, good. It looks like they are vegetables, so we can continue on with the rest of the video. So yeah, I don't really like garlic or onions. Kind of. You see, when I was just a wee little bunny and eating away at whatever when I was like really little, I remember chewing down on some garlic and onion on separate occasion, and each time I really didn't like how it felt in my mouth. It was just really gritty and chewy for something that I was expecting to be like, soft and, slightly more chewable. And their really intense flavor didn't help their case, so I was just like, yeah, I'm never eating this again. So anytime I saw my mom cooking with garlic and onions, I was like, no, I don't want that. You can't put that in there. And my mom had to break the news to me that everything had onion and garlic in it. And my tiny little head was blown away by that prospect. I did not know that everything had garlic and onion in it, and it's basically the most essential thing that flavors food. So was that going to make me like them? No, it wasn't. I liked them. I disliked them even more. Onion especially, because when I was helping my mom in the kitchen and she asked me, oh, can you cut up some onion for me, please? And me, being the good daughter I am, was like, yes, mother, I shall cut you up some onions. And then as soon as I start doing my good deed, I start crying because of course onions make you cry, and it really stings and it feels really bad, and I feel like my eyes are burning out of my sockets and it feels really bad and really painful. So you heard about all my cons to why I dislike garlic and onion, but you haven't heard the pros. And the pros for why I like it is taste. That's all I like about it. The actual diluted taste of garlic and onions and artificial garlic and onion is actually really nice. I don't know why I was protesting against it so much when I really like the flavor. But I can't be a hypocrite about it, I have to stand my ground, I have to protect my honor as the number one garlic and onion hater. Mom eventually realized that if she diced the onion really small and use a garlic mincer to mince the onion, then I would never know that she put anything inside of it. And whenever I asked her if she put some in there, she'd be like, no, of course, Lucky, I didn't put any in there. There's no garlic or onion in there. And I would just eat it like a fool. But I was a kid, so I guess I just believe whatever my mother told me. And that's basically how my onion and garlic hatred turned to kind of hatred. I still don't really like how they feel in my mouth, which is why I still go to my mother's tactic where I mince the garlic and I really finely dice the onions, even though I cry in the process of it. And just for funsies, because this is my video, I decided I'm going to rank them from C being the lowest tier, where I will eat you in very specific circumstances but not in real raw form, and S being that I have major trust issues against you, and unless you hurt me, I won't hurt you back. I know it's a very weird tier list, but it's my tier list. So with that out of the way, we're going to put onion at the bottom and garlic goes after it in B tier. Back to the rest of the food. Now the next food on the chopping block will be pork. Yeah, I don't like pork. The weird thing about this one is that I actually really liked pork when I was smaller and I didn't have any problems with it. It wasn't until I got a bit older that's when I started having issues with it. I think my issues can stem back to when I was like maybe 16 or 17, and my lovely parents decided to hop on the trend of a carnivore diet. Now, before anybody thinks, no, it isn't the extreme carnivore diet where literally all you can have is red meat and butter. This was back in ye old times when TikTok didn't existed, or it did exist and people just weren't interested in being on it. And the carnivore diet just meant that you eat mostly meat. It didn't matter what kind of meat. It can be red meat, it can be lean meat, just as long as it was meat. You were allowed to have other stuff on the diet, like leafy greens or low carb vegetables that were mostly green, but it was still vegetables. You weren't just eating meat, especially not raw meat. And take it with a grain of salt. I can't entirely remember if my parents asked us if we wanted to or not, just told us we're going on a carnivore diet. You kids don't have any say in it, so here's your lunchbox. There's some meat in there. Go and have fun. But either way, I was on a carnivore diet, but it wasn't for long. I think it was only like 1 or 2 weeks, so it wasn't that long. And I quite enjoyed it. I also lost some weight that I gained mostly back, but we're not going to talk about that. And everything was fine and dandy. Until one day, I come downstairs because I can smell something being cooked, and I saw my dad was making pork chops. I'm like, oh, lovely, I like pork chops. I'm going to have some. So my dad whips up a pork chop for me. I go upstairs, I cut it up, I put one slice in my mouth, and I felt like I was gonna throw up, and I spat out the food. So at first I thought, oh, maybe it's just a fluke. Maybe I just had a huge bite of fat or something. So I take another bite from a less fatty portion, and yet I still felt absolutely disgusting. I wanted to spit it out again, which I did. And then I proceed to go back downstairs, put the plate down, and say, I don't want this anymore. And my dad looked at me very confused, but he didn't say anything, and I just went back upstairs, hungry and feeling awful. And after that day, I didn't want to eat pork anymore. Anytime I could smell some being cooked downstairs, it made me feel sick. Every time I saw a pork chop, it made me feel sick. It wasn't until a few months later when I went downstairs and saw congealed fat in a frying pan that I realized, oh, I don't like fat. Now what I mean by that is I just don't like fatty food like pork and other substances because it makes me feel sick. I don't know why I suddenly got a distaste for fatty food. Maybe it was because I went on a carnivore diet and I had too much fat and my body was like, nope, no more fat for you, you had enough. Now I know what you're thinking. Lucky, it sounds like you don't like pork at all, so why is it in a foods I kinda hate video? Well, I'm going to tell you now. I can't tolerate pork if it's the main dish. For example, if it's pork chop with lovely seasoning and a lovely sauce, I'm not going to eat it because it's still pork, it still has the fat, it's still really gamey. I don't like it. But if the fat is stripped off of the pork chop and it's nicely diced and put inside of other things like in rice or in a sauce or in a curry, then I don't mind it as much. I do sometimes end up with pieces that do have fat on them and it makes me feel, again, makes me feel like throwing up. So I just put it to the side, I go downstairs and I just toss it in the trash. So if I have to put it on our mini tier list, I will put it right up at B because I really don't like it. It really needs to be like really finely diced and mixed in with a bunch of other stuff for me not to care that it's there. But if it's by itself, yeah, I would rather run a marathon than actually eat it. So there you go. And last and definitely least, because that is the last food in the group where I kinda like it, kinda don't like it, and that is fish. Because I have trust issues with fish. Much like pork, I used to really like fish. I remember going to the beach with my family when I was really little and getting fried sardines. I know sardines in general get a very bad rep, but I'm telling you, fried sardines are a whole different beast. When you get fried sardines with batter on them and a bit of lemon juice on them, ooh, it is so good. I miss them so much. They get them in my mouth. But of course, like many good things in your childhood, good things all die and become traumatizing. So there I am eating away at some sardines when I'm little, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm choking because I am choking. As we all learn from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, we know that sardines are really small, which means that if you eat them, as long as you chew them really well, it doesn't matter that the bones are still left inside them. You'll just chew them into a powder and you eat it and there's no problem. Apparently, when I was smaller, I didn't get that memo. So there's little baby Lucky eating away at some sardines as she starts choking on one. My dad sees I'm choking, he panics, he starts slapping my back, so I spit it out. Thankfully I do, and I don't die. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this video. Now back to the story. Usually when you have a near-death experience is when you're older and you comprehend what happened and you can actually, take steps to improving your life from there. But little baby Lucky was just like, if I eat sardines again, or any fish for that matter, I'm going to die because the bones are trying to kill me. That was my logic. That was my little 6-year-old logic. So I decided to ban ever eating any kind of fish. And I stuck to it for almost 21 years. Yay! The only kind of fish I allowed myself to eat was tuna. Only canned tuna. Because there was going to be no bones in the canned tuna. I hoped. For the longest of time, I only ate canned tuna. And I never wanted to eat any other fish. Until I went to my friend's house one day. Now, I'll start off by saying I love my friend. I adore my friend. We probably will grow old together and live in the same retirement home and probably yell at each other the whole time and not understand what we're saying. But she is extremely picky. Do you know those videos on TikTok where people show like foods they don't like and it's basically everything? Yeah, she's like a slight dial below that. One of the few foods she does like though is salmon. But salmon is very well known for having super tiny bones that are really hard to find. It's a skill. It's a skill to be able to find all the tiny bones in salmon so the customer doesn't choke. So when her mom brought us some salmon fillets and said we can make those for lunch, and she was like, yeah, totally, we can do that. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I like living, thank you. I didn't actually say that because I'm too nice and I was hungry and, I don't refuse food because I'm a trash panda. So very begrudgingly we started making the fillets, and the closer it got to being done, the more and more I got nervous because yes, while it is nicely packaged and then they make sure to get rid of all the bones, there's still a possibility that one singular bone might be in there. It has happened to me before. The few times I have trusted fish and I ate it, it ended up with a bone almost getting lodged in my throat and choking again. This is why this is the food I have the most trust issues with and why I don't like eating it. But if I'm willing to take a bullet for my friend, I might as well be willing to eat some salmon with her. So the salmon gets done cooking. We sit down at the table with a bit of lettuce and we start eating it. And I very cautiously start cutting into it and kind of splitting it apart to make sure no bones are sticking out. And I very cautiously take it to my mouth, start chewing on it, and I realize, hey, this is actually kind of good. And I just eat the whole fillet and there was no bones. But there's always a possibility, and I'm not taking the chances anymore. After that, I ended up having salmon at her house a few more times, and eventually my trust slowly started building up towards fish again, and I started incorporating into my diet again. I started getting cod and some salmon for me at home, which my brothers didn't really appreciate because they also didn't like fish for their own reasons, but I didn't care because that meant more food for me and I didn't have to share. So now with that long-winded rant about fish, where does it go on the tier list? Well, it goes straight up to S. Why? Because even though I love it and I think it's very healthy and has a lot of protein, I still have a lot of trust issues with it. I'm not gonna eat something on the regular if I have trust issues with it, and I'm pretty sure if I choke on a bone again, I'm gonna go right back to that mindset of I'm never eating this again. So this is the final tier list of all the foods ranked, going from least hated to most untrustworthy food. I don't know how we ended up with that tier list, but it is what it is. And thank you all for sticking around and listening to me rant about all the foods I hate, kind of. I know it's a huge deter from what I usually make, which is just opening up blind boxes or remnants or just, my other addictions that I have, but this was a nice change of pace. I really like it, and it gives you guys a chance to learn more about me. Is this the most useful information you could have? Probably not, but hey, if we ever meet up in real life, never to give me fish, because I will trust you as much as I trust the fish, which is very little. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoy making it for you guys, and as always, Lucky out.